You wake up in a big room full of your alternate selves. There's one that went to a different high school than you, one that decided to choose a different job, one that lost a leg in an accident, and so on, and so on. Which versions of you would you like to meet first and why? I would first like to meet the successful version on me first, then a version of me who failed in life, a confident version and one with no self-esteem, one who has found happiness in life and one who has not. And last, I'd like to meet a carbon copy of myself. I think this should put my life into perspective. You wake up in a big room full of your alternate selves. There's one that went to a different high school than you, one that decided to choose a different job, one that lost a leg in an accident, and so on, and so on. Which versions of you would you like to meet first and why? Part 2. The one that married my friend. A few years after graduation, my 21M at the time, FWB, 18F at the time, proposed to me, but I said no because I just wanted to be with other girls. We eventually grew apart and I married someone else who I am doubting per second guessing about marrying now. Anyway, she grew up to become a doctor graduate of Harvard. She always made me laugh and smile and made me happy. She was super nice to me all of the time and I let her get away. Don't get me wrong, I'm not, nor have I ever been in love with her, but I would have loved to see myself if I married her instead of my current wife. You've got 1 year until you move out of your parents' house. You have no adult skills. What are the most important things to learn? Part 2. Learn to budget. The absolute worst thing you could do living on your own is to get yourself into debt you can't get out of. Say you have a credit card you owe $2,000 on at 5% interest, which is a good interest rate. If you can only make the minimum payment of $50 on it, it will still take you over 3-5 years to pay that off. And God forbid you are late on a payment and the credit card company raises the rate up to 12% or 20%. It's really for the best to not get yourself into debt if you can help it. Additionally, learn to. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. The fact that there are 2 Rumpelstiltskins in the Shrek universe really annoys me and many people seem to not have noticed. We all know the Rumpelstiltskin from the last movie, but in Shrek the Third, when Prince Charming enters the poison apple and starts talking to other villains, he actually talks to Rumpelstiltskin, but it's not the same that appears in Shrek Forever After. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 2. In Futurama, how does Leela not understand why that one guy is a whale biologist? She used to assign people their jobs, because all occupations are based on what you're best at, not what you want. You gotta do what you gotta do. His response is equally baffling, though hilarious. I don't know you well enough to get into that. It was assigned to you. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 3. I've watched Thomas and Friends for many years as a kid and now my 4-year-old watch it also. Among many questions, are the drivers completely useless? How are they not able to prevent trains from crashing, falling off the rails, backing up too far, etc.? And are they telepathic? Trains talk to one another without drivers. Sir Topham Hatt ever hearing anything? Also the Duke/Peter Sam/Sir Handel temporal anomaly of seemingly existing years before Sodor Railway and Thomas, Gordon, James, etc. But the trains also run on adjacent tracks in the same time period. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 4. In X-Files there are like 3 different versions of Samantha's abduction and they all significantly impact the plot in the way Mulder reacts to certain situations. It's my favorite show of all time, but I've always found it annoying that they kept retconning that aspect of the myth arc. I know why they did it, but it was dumb emo. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 5. In the original Star Wars Obi-Wan's wearing a big robe to hide himself so nobody knows he's a Jedi, but in the prequels they made those robes Jedi robes so now Obi-Wan is literally walking around in Jedi clothing while trying to hide from the Empire. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it, what plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 6. I watched The Walking Dead up until the motherfucking tiger. I just couldn't handle it. Everyone, and like I mean everyone was scrounging around for food and you're telling me this guy had enough food to feed a fucking tiger. For like I'd how long it was, but at least a year or two. That's so much food. Because if he wasn't feeding the tiger, then it would for sure kill and eat him. So everyone, all his friends are just cool with feeding this tiger hundreds of pounds of food, just so this one fucking guy can look cool. Aw, fuck that. Just so stupid. Also, they killed off everyone I cared about. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it. What plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 7. In the original King Kong, apparently the locals built this giant wall around their city to keep Kong out, right? So why is there a Kong-sized door in the wall? At some point they must have said, we need to build a wall big enough to keep out the giant ape. I know, let's put a huge door in it and then we'll just lock it. Fans who have been engrossed in a fictional universe so much you could probably earn a degree about it. What plot holes, logical inconsistencies, and the like cannot be reconciled and bother you to no end. Part 8. You've probably heard this one before, but in Harry Potter, Hogwarts was built before the invention of the sink, or basin, whatever you want to call it. However, the Chamber of Secrets, built at the same time as the rest of the castle, uses a sink as its method of entry. So how did Salazar Slytherin create an entrance to the chamber using a form of indoor plumbing that wouldn't exist for centuries to come? Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Not my company, but a company from a neighboring building. They had an entire area devoted to foosball, pinball, billiards, console gaming, and video booths on the ground floor, and it was clearly visible because of the glass windows on street level. Oddly enough, nobody ever used them, and the place was almost always empty save for a few people who used the internet kiosks. When I learned a friend worked there, I asked why nobody would want to take the opportunity to use the awesome-looking recreational facility. He told me that people who used the facility often found it used against them during performance evaluations, even when their use wasn't excessive at all. After a while word got around and they started avoiding the place altogether. The irony is that their recruitment ads always touts a culture of work hard, play hard. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 2. I worked at B&Q and one of my colleagues was stabbed 30 times by a customer. I was completely shaken. The next morning we were taken into a big room and made to sign a document saying we wouldn't sue them. If we didn't sign, we'd lose our jobs. Also, my colleague was stabbed only a month after they got rid of our security guard to save money. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 3. This happened a couple of weeks ago. When HR sent out an email to management, excluding me and about 2 other people, telling them to fraudulently leave good reviews on Glassdoor and to coerce others to do the same. Edit: I'm not exactly on a throwaway, so I'm going to refrain from mentioning the company at this time. However, it looks like this is a common issue and there needs to be a better way to call this out. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 4. I was at a fast casual restaurant for a couple months and the GM always talked about the culture. You know what's a great culture? When the morning shift and night shift have their daily screaming matches over shit that they each accuse the other one of needing to do. It was impressive just how incompetent the entire company was, from ownership down. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 5. Not me, but my husband worked for 2 weeks for a family-owned and operated business that touted how important family was and that they were all one happy family. My husband was on his way to drop her at the time 2-year-old son off at daycare before work when son threw up all over himself. Husband called his employer to tell them what happened and that he needed to take son home and clean him up, but he'd be in ASAP. His manager told him he needed to get his priorities straight. He responded with, "You know what? You're right, I won't be back in at all." He was still working part-time at his previous job where they had been sad that he was leaving, so he called them and told them to put him back on the schedule full-time. The family business is currently in the process of liquidating assets before going out of business and I cackle every time I drive past it. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 6. Last year I was working as a subcontractor and I was assigned a new place of work. Just 2 weeks after I started, the new boss wanted to hire me. He put down the contract where, compared to my current contract, pay was down 25%. Average weekly hours went up by 20%, vacation days went down by 10% and I wouldn't have a company car for personal use anymore. Before he actually handed me the contract to read it, he said, "I will only make you this offer once, but it's only valid if you change all your pictures on your social media and you sell your car. It's too flashy for our company." How about no? Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 7. This is for Flight Centre, headquartered in Brisbane, Australia, but they are a global company trading under many names. I think it's Liberty Travel in the States. Anyway, everything about the company internally screams cringe. Everyone treats the CEO like a fucking god. His name is Screw, and when he takes a selfie it's called a scroofy, and they opened a foreign exchange ATM at the head office that they called a screw-a, which sounds like scrotum if you ask me. It's fucking ridiculous. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 8. When I went to firm drinks in a public bar and the firm's fund committee handed out song sheets and a choir of employees led by a bad guitarist sang a song about how great the firm was to the tune of "'Cause I'm Happy." We were expected to sing along. It was at that moment I realized I was in a cult. Redditors who left companies that non-stop talk about their amazing culture. What was the cringe moment that made you realize you had to get out? Part 9. When I had to phone around to the corporation leaders to find out why none of the mechanics I had interviewed were hired. The mechanics have come from all over the country, and some had waited patiently for months to know if they got the job or not. Turned out the CEO had changed his mind and wanted me to take care of all mechanic work. I was a factory manager. But they knew I'd be upset, so neither he, HR, or the COO wanted to be the one to tell me. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Knew a girl for 5 years, and every single time she broke up with whatever boyfriend she was dating at the time, she'd take it out on me. That doesn't seem so bad, but she had close to 6 boyfriends a year or something like that. The last straw was when my grandfather died and I was very torn up about it, but turns out she'd broken up with her boyfriend the very same day. So after telling me what a horrible friend I was, and how I am never there for her, I just completely ghosted her. She lives one street over from me, so I constantly see her driving by and staring at me. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 2. Borrowed my PC, found all of my passwords autosaved in Chrome. He deleted as many accounts as he could, sent inappropriate emails to business contacts, deleted personal files. He did it out of nowhere and with no real reason. I just recall him saying, "I'm gonna play a prank on you at some point," and I just laughed. I guess that is what he was referring to. Scumbag. Worst part is that he is my cousin and he did this for no reason. A few months after he borrowed my PC, he took a picture of the passwords. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 3. His wife decided she loved me, wanted me. I don't blame him one bit for cutting ties, though I miss them both very much. We were all young and stupid and not up for maturely dealing with that situation at the time. To make it worse, his last girlfriend, before getting married, made a similar decision. A couple decades later we chatted online for a minute. It was like old times, same feel, same instant click, same easy conversation and understanding between us, and guess what? He was getting married again. He linked me their Facebook page and they looked great together. Without thinking, I said, "She's really lovely, I can't wait to meet her." He went silent and then dropped offline. Never talked to me again. Still don't blame him. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 4. My mom went overseas for a year and before she left she gave me one of those yellow ribbon magnets that said "Keep my mommy safe." I hung it up in my locker at school that my friend and I shared. One day it went missing and she never admitted to it, but only her and I knew the combo to our locker. Did someone just run by the locker when it was open one day and snatch it for no reason? I doubt it. She was a compulsive liar and most likely she got pissed at me for something pointless and threw it away. Yes, it's just a magnet, but I was 16 and my mom was just sent halfway across the world to an unsafe country. Every single day I thought whether I'd ever see her again. The magnet meant everything to me. Fuck you, Amy. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 5. My childhood best friend was at a restaurant having dinner with his girlfriend and invited my roommate and I to join them for after-dinner drinks. We arrived at the restaurant and ordered a single pitcher of PBR. Afterwards the waitress dropped off the check which included my friend's dinner, and the pitcher of PBR. My friend insisted we split the check 4 ways. I said no way, and asked to see the receipt so I could figure out how much we owe for the beer. He made a loud ordeal about it, saying sarcastically, "Oh yeah, the guy who went to community college is going to tell me how to divide the check." My roommate and I gave him some cash for our beer and then left. The next morning I called him to say how shitty he had acted and he brushed it off saying we were both so drunk. We can't drink that much next time. He never owned up to it and I haven't seen him since. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 6. We were best friends since grade school and kept in touch despite going to different middle and high schools. She ended up dating a cousin of mine and they got married. We were still pretty close but I ended up going away for college and during that time she cheated on my cousin and they divorced. I still don't know all the details. I know that I bumped into her brother a few years ago and he was really pissed off when I asked about her. Redditors no longer on speaking terms with their former best friend for life due to one incident. What happened? Part 7. Whenever he would contact me, he would always want something. Usually money. He didn't contact me just to hang out or do something with our spouses. I began to dread seeing his name come up on my phone. One of the last times we did get together, he asked for some money and then insulted my wife. I have ghosted him, hoping he changes, but not feeling confident he will. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? That my best friend just died. He was riding a motorcycle and I was following behind him in a car. I was the first person on the scene. I saw his face. I heard him fighting for air through his broken nose and broken neck. I talked to him 6 days a week for the last 5 years, whether it be a real conversation or me just sending him a funny link I found here on Reddit. We were supposed to get an apartment together next week. I drove cross-country with him. Best memories I have are with him. He wants me to travel and be successful, when he was always the more educated one. Rooting for me when I needed it most. Now he is gone. And I will have to become successful without him. Rest easy, Kevin. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? Part 2. Sometimes I get worried that I'm not actually good enough to do my job and someone else deserves to be in this role. I had to work really hard for years to get the position I'm in now. I start planning my finances as if I'm going to get fired when I get really worried about it. Honestly, just asking the question was a great help. I don't ever tell anyone this because I feel like I need to appear confident. Thanks for letting me get it out. Smile. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? Part 3. My former best friend is now romantically involved with the love of my life. The breakup was hard enough, but this feels like too much and it's hard to even function. I can't get it off my mind for longer than 5 seconds and I've fought a few rounds with depression, but this is something deeper when every one of my best memories of the last 6 years has been with one of these two people. Oh, and I found this out on my birthday last week. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? Part 4. I'm broke and jobless, not getting any callbacks or interviews. If nothing changes I'll be homeless at the end of the month. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? Part 5. Both of my adult children have serious health issues. The 27-year-old has possible thyroid tumor, results come in next week. The 24-year-old has had 2 instances of SVT, when the heart races super fast with no apparent cause, that landed her in the ER and will be seeing a cardiologist next week as well. I feel overwhelmed and helpless. Reddit, what's currently stressing you out, and how can we help? Part 6. I need about $4,000 in dental work and I don't have insurance. It looks like we might need to tent our house and we don't have the money for the hotel. My car keeps breaking down and my hours got cut in half. Also, school is expensive. I will figure something out, but any cute animal pictures will help. For those that work in underground city systems such as subway transit or underground utilities or anything else, what are some interesting things you have seen down there that most of us will never get to see? I work for the company who fits and sells the advertising on the London Underground. You would surprised at what I see on a nightly basis. Homeless sleeping on tracks, hiding in toilets, rats the size of small ships, but most of all is the noises. I'm not sure if it's the shape of the tunnels which make noises sound different, but sometimes we hear screaming, like high-pitched screaming echo down through. Sends chills down my spine every time. For those that work in underground city systems such as subway transit or underground utilities or anything else, what are some interesting things you have seen down there that most of us will never get to see? Part 2. I work for NYC Transit. I work a desk job, but I can walk the tracks. I've got access to old plans, so I've perused drawings that back to the 1900s for plans for proposed lines. There are a lot of hidden things that you know are there underground. Fan plants, electrical rooms, etc. A story was relayed to me that there was a closed-off tunnel and no one had been in it for years. Sometime in the early 90s some maintenance workers broke the lock and went in. They found a skeleton. It had been there since the 50s or 60s. Don't go to places where you don't belong. For those that work in underground city systems such as subway transit or underground utilities or anything else, what are some interesting things you have seen down there that most of us will never get to see? Part 3. I have worked for a while as a project engineer for a Fortune 500 company on a new Middle Eastern subway system. More specifically, my duties covered the design of the CCTV and video content analysis subsystem. The general public would probably be amazed at how pervasive, widespread and automated is a modern surveillance system. Given the need, you can most likely be tracked from once you step inside a station to the moment you leave the network. For those that work in underground city systems such as subway transit or underground utilities or anything else, what are some interesting things you have seen down there that most of us will never get to see? Part 5. Underneath a major UK airport is an undocumented maze of tunnels that run for more than 5 miles off the site to a related location and a transport depot. My employers, who had been providing certain technical services to that airport for decades, were shocked to be shown this as they had no idea. What's the biggest thing people perceive wrongly about you? Part 2. I don't get all giddy when I'm really excited, so they assume I'm having a terrible time. My girlfriend and I went to a concert last week. She was afraid that I had hated it because my facial expression was similar to how it always is. And I guess I wasn't doing the hand-waving thing that people do at concerts. I actually enjoyed the concert a lot and can't wait for the next one. If I tell you I'm having fun, that means I'm probably having fun. What's the biggest thing people perceive wrongly about you? Part 3. I just started a new job. The people there think I am cool as a cucumber. On the inside, I am an anxiety-fueled mess. I like to keep up appearances. The last time I divulged my secret at another job, my supervisor was incredibly surprised. But they see my lack of big outward reaction as calmness, and I've since turned that into a strength. What's the biggest thing people perceive wrongly about you? Part 4. That I'm gay. Even my wife once thought this about me. I'm a smiley, friendly guy that's more interested in musical theater than any sport. I'm laid back, relaxed, in touch with my emotions, and completely non-aggressive when it comes to playing and flirting with my predominantly female friends. Oh, and because I was really close with a friend, who was also into theater, during our college years, there were a lot of jokes about us being a couple. What children's movie would be worth remaking as a dark rated R movie? The Incredibles. I had the DVD a few years back and loved going through the bonus features because there's basically a dossier on all these old superheroes that were killed. It's actually got a lot of interesting information about how some of them were killed fighting robot model so-and-so or sucked into a jet turbine, or a lot of them had the data expunged. Now I love the story in The Incredibles, but personally, there is a tale in the background that's much more interesting and I'd love to see come out. Imagine, a league of superheroes having to face the harsh reality of a public that no longer wants them, while their numbers slowly diminish, heroes disappearing one by one. An assassin shrouded in mystery, a stylish 1960s backdrop, peeks at the budding romance of Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible. Courtroom drama a la the McCarthy hearings. It could be amazing. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Oog. Me and my first boyfriend, being around 13 years old, had no idea how to kiss. Our first makeout consisted of us just licking each other's tongues with our eyes wide open staring at each other. We did this in public. I will never forget the day an upperclassman laughed at us and said, "Dude, close your eyes." What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Part 2. My first relationship. I had seen a post on somewhere claiming the best backup plan to being rejected when asking someone if they want to kiss was to pull out some Hershey's Kisses and act as if that you were simply asking if they wanted some. I thought I'd use this the next day when the girl I had a crush on came over. We were laying on my bed 2 feet apart watching The Shining. I look at her, she doesn't look at me. I say fuck it and ask, "Hey, do you want a kiss?" She pauses for a good 5 seconds before saying no with disgust in her voice. I then, thinking I'm a bloody legend, pull out a bag of Hershey's Kisses and say, "More for me then." She knew I wasn't asking her if she wanted Hershey's Kisses, and I knew she knew. We sat in silence and watched the rest of the movie as I ate a whole bag of Hershey's Kisses. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Part 3. Our hormones outweighed our consciences, and we had sex under a blanket on a couch like 3 feet from some of our friends. We tried to move as little as possible to give the impression that we were just cuddling, but I don't think anyone was fooled, because all of our friends got up and moved to another room. They left the door open though, and could still see us. Didn't matter, we just hit fuck it and, well, fucked. Loudly. I haven't spoken to those people in a long time. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Part 4. Had my first relationship with a girl when I was 12. Our relationship consisted of mostly hanging out at school and talking on the phone. Then we planned a date to the movies, which everyone in 8th grade knows mean going on for a kiss. I was incredibly nervous, so I asked my older brother, older by a year, how to kiss. He assured me all I had to do was spell out the alphabet with my tongue. So we go to see the movie, and after I lay on the already cringe yawn arm around her, I go in for the kiss. I fervently started tracing A B C D. She pulled away around F and didn't say another word in the movie or on the car ride home when my mom picked us up. She broke up with me the day after. What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Part 5. Gave a girl a CD with a single song on it. Falling for You by Student Rick, and a long note describing how the music expressed my feelings. Did not label the CD. Also happened to burn a Bad Religion CD the same night. Did not label this CD either. Got mad at girl when she told me she only got to listen to the first half of the CD. What the hell? There was only one track. She didn't even listen to it. Guess what I heard when I put in my Bad Religion CD? What was the cringiest thing you did in your first relationship? Part 6. Logging into each other's Facebooks to post stupid shit. For example, it post from his account something along the lines of GF is the best GF in the world, I love her so much. And all of our high school friends thought it was funny. Also generally oversharing too much online, from me being mad at him, to me gushing about how great he was. I turned on Facebook memory notifications a year or two ago so I could meticulously comb through my Facebook posts day by day and purge the years of embarrassment from my account. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? Part 2. I mod a true crime subreddit. A few years ago, a user on a new account posted some extremely graphic pictures, claiming that they had killed and were going to kill again. Reverse image search, 0 results. I forwarded it to the admins at once and advised they contact the authorities immediately. I hope they did something. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? Part 3. Remember reading about a guy who was with his GF and her family around a bonfire. They were getting drunk and one of her brothers says how he likes taking pop shots at hikers on the trail. They just got back from hunting and all had rifles. Then another one said how he saw a lady hiking, so he followed her, found her camp, raped her, made her write a suicide note, then he killed her. Now that's pretty fucked by itself. What makes it worse though is a commenter said how Teresa, an unsolved death of a woman on that same trail, who had a small camp, was alone and killed herself. No one found the camp for a few years, but they knew she went missing. Remember reading the article they linked, and fucking hell, it's eerie. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? Part 5. I believe it was a post from Watch People D. It was a gif from a security cam of a mom and her son going up an escalator. As they were getting to the top, the escalator started coming apart and collapsing. So as this is happening, the mother throws her son to safety on the platform above, but then falls into the gears of the escalator. As she is swallowed up and crushed by the gears, her son watched disappear and die. That one fucked me up for a while. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? Part 6. One time a few years ago, I was reading a user's comment history and I saw one comment she'd left in a normal subreddit, can't remember which one, talking about how she always wanted to be a mother due to her naturally nurturing and compassionate nature. A few posts down from that one, I saw another comment she'd left in a subreddit full of pictures of dead children, where she was lamenting the fact that the mods no longer let you post sexual comments on the pictures of dead kids. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? Part 7. For me, it's the post from the guy who didn't hear his wife being attacked and raped downstairs because his gaming headset was noise cancelling. Eventually he does hear something and goes to investigate. The rapist was still on top of her until op shot him. I wear bone conductive headsets, usually with one pushed up a bit so that my ears are fully exposed so that I can still hear my wife if she ever needed me. You wake up in a big room full of your alternate selves. There's one that went to a different high school than you, one that decided to choose a different job, one that lost a leg in an accident, and so on, and so on. Which versions of you would you like to meet first and why? Part 3. Well, this is a weird one. I guess I would go with one that's either very similar or very different. Like for the similar one, maybe I'd pick one that went to class in college and didn't drop out. See how he turned out. For the one that's different, I guess the version of me that lived in the 1400s would be cool to meet. Philadelphia is considering opening a site where drug users can go to legally use drugs. They would be monitored by medical professionals who would administer anti-overdose medication as needed. Medical professionals, how would you feel about having this job? Public health worker here. What everyone is missing is that it is a harm reduction method. No, it's not ideal, but it's going to happen whether or not we like it to or not. So it's better that they do it in a safer, sterile environment. I recommend you all to read High Price by Carl Hart. A lot of you have strong misconceptions about addiction, and the role of social aspects like community play in addiction. Also, welcome to public health. There is no perfect intervention that will solve all problems. People are too complex for that. Philadelphia is considering opening a site where drug users can go to legally use drugs. They would be monitored by medical professionals who would administer anti-overdose medication as needed. Medical professionals, how would you feel about having this job? Part 2. In keeping with the original question, I personally would not want to have the job. It would fundamentally alter the way I currently practice, and this far into my career I don't think it would be safe for me to perform this particular job. I do see the value in the service, but it will take a very specific person to do the job. You want someone that not only knows how to monitor and reverse the narcotics as needed, but also someone that knows the difference between someone just being really high or actually dying. If the staff just goes around reversing all the intoxication, then nobody will use the space at all. Philadelphia is considering opening a site where drug users can go to legally use drugs. They would be monitored by medical professionals who would administer anti-overdose medication as needed. Medical professionals, how would you feel about having this job? Part 3. I'm a medic in Philly. Drive down a mile-long stretch of Kensington Avenue and you will see at least one person actively shooting up with a needle in their arm. Something needs to be done. I don't know if this is the solution, but we need to do something. I'd rather have this done and fail rather than not do anything at all and continue watching my city succumb to this epidemic. Philadelphia is considering opening a site where drug users can go to legally use drugs. They would be monitored by medical professionals who would administer anti-overdose medication as needed. Medical professionals, how would you feel about having this job? Part 4. I am an RN and I would work at this type of job, sure, if the pay was comparable to similar jobs. I believe these people need help. They will be using no matter what. At least there is less chance they will die at a place like this, and I would imagine the facility would provide resources to people who are ready to get clean. Philadelphia is considering opening a site where drug users can go to legally use drugs. They would be monitored by medical professionals who would administer anti-overdose medication as needed. Medical professionals, how would you feel about having this job? Part 5. Throwaway here so hopefully nobody identifies me. I don't see a lot of medical professionals in this thread, so here is the perspective of a registered nurse who has cared for odd patients and patients with history of drug abuse/addiction. I could never work in a setting like this, and I feel that most of my colleagues would agree. 3 major reasons come to mind. When has the thought, wow, I may be a horrible person, ever crossed your mind? Had a FWB that turned into a relationship, but the love was not there. Afraid losing good sex, I started buying her things, lent her money and made her depend on me. Knowing her welfare check could never allow her to pay anything back, every time she would not answering my calls or texts for a couple of days I reminded her in some way how she were in debt to me. Finally it just struck me. I am a fucking horrible person. Now she is seeing someone she loves and I am happy for her. I will not take any money back from her. Sorry for bad English. When has the thought, wow, I may be a horrible person, ever crossed your mind? Part 2. My friend was in his early 20s, dating a 17-year-old girl who was possibly terminally ill. Weird scenario, I know, but that's another story. I needed to get back to college, and she needed to get to a medical appointment in the same town, so I rode in the car with them. My friend and I spent the whole ride making each other laugh by trying to come up with the most insane make-a-wish wishes she could use, totally disregarding how she might feel about what we were saying. When has the thought, wow, I may be a horrible person, ever crossed your mind? Part 3. I saw a picture of the Twin Towers burning, with Obi-Wan Kenobi superimposed on it. The caption was, "These blast points are too accurate for sand people." And I still find it hilarious and shameful at once. I only take solace in that I'm part sand person, as it were. I still hate myself for laughing repeatedly at it though. When has the thought, wow, I may be a horrible person, ever crossed your mind? Part 4. A lot recently, my mom passed away about a week and a half ago. And I don't feel sad or feel that I need to mourn or grieve. I was really close to my mom. I talked to her about almost everything. After my dad died, I would eat dinner with her 3 nights a week because I didn't like the thought of her eating alone. When she got diagnosed with cancer back in January, I was just dumbstruck by it all. When we got the news she was terminal over the summer, I had some really rough nights. But I haven't cried, mourned, or grieved since she passed. I felt like I had already moved on before the sun set on her fresh grave. I feel like I may be a horrible person because I'm not mourning or grieving. I just went back to my life, and have felt pretty happy over the last week or so. If Tinder existed 100 years ago, what would be some common things written in the bios? Important notes for people judging. World War I ended in 1918, so the boys are back in town, and U.S. 18th Amendment was passed, so you have 1 year before Prohibition starts. Drink up me hearties. Wartime Prohibition Act starts. Banning sale of alcoholic beverages with alcohol content greater than 1.28%. 19th Amendment guaranteeing women's suffrage is approved and sent to states for ratification. U.S. population 104 million and had 7.5 million cars registered. Most popular movie, The Miracle Man. The near future. The KKK starts rapid rise in 1920, peaking in 1924. Disney starts in 1923. If Tinder existed 100 years ago, what would be some common things written in the bios? Part 2. I can lift a fully grown horse above my head, and I can hold my breath for 10 minutes. To settle a wager, I once ate a pound of P.B. Fowk's strongest badger poison and then ran a mile in the nude. I cannot feel pain, and I can see for 2 miles unaided by a lens. No man can kill me. I have beaten a man of every race in formal combat, including a Turk, a pygmy Negro man and a rare deep-water Jew. A medical doctor and 2 priests have written and signed a document confirming that I have no soul. Which extinct species would you bring back, if you have the power? All the Pleistocene megafauna. So mammoths, ground sloths, the California tapir, glyptodonts, the European lion, the Ice Age spotted hyena, short-faced bears, diprotodons, Merck's rhinoceros, sloth lemurs, elephant birds, moas, dire wolves, the straight-tusked elephant, saber-toothed cats, gomphotheres, Shivatherium, steppe bison, terrestrial crocodiles, megalania, short-faced kangaroos, the marsupial lion, thylacine, various mainland giant tortoises, quagga, megaloceros, and the list goes on. What's the worst thing you stepped on with bare feet? Part 2. Human shit. Hopped out of the pool at a resort in the U.S. Headed over to the chair to towel off and had to veer around another couple and a couple sets of chairs. I slipped in something and nearly ate it in front of dozens of people. Once I was stable, I looked down and saw a brown pool behind the smear my foot left in it. There was more in the chair. Someone had shat themselves in the beach chair and waddled away, leaking soft serve all over the pool deck. What's the worst thing you stepped on with bare feet? Part 3. Fuck people saying Lego. Step in a sea urchin once. Compared to that, stepping in Lego is like walking on pillows. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Dirt bike accident where I was clotheslined by a rusty chain at about 25 miles per hour. I was partially decapitated, arteries and windpipe broke apart. I was flown in a helicopter to a hospital and remember the guy on the helicopter continuously talking to me, telling me not to fall asleep. I fought but did go to sleep/died. It really does just feel like you are going to sleep peacefully. I was revived a few minutes later at the hospital where I remember coming back and awake for maybe a few seconds before I was either put under or blacked out, then woke up a day or so later on a bed with a tube down my throat in the ER. Met the pilot and guy who kept talking to me a few weeks later in recovery. Owe them my life. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Part 2. Cardiac arrest at age 23. I did not realize what was happening but began to feel lightheaded and sat down, and then remember feeling an incredibly brief overwhelming peace and comfort, followed by absolute nothingness. My heart was kept going by CPR until paramedics came with a defibrillator. Becoming alert again at hospital was painful and brutal, which I think was mostly because CPR when done correctly is gnarly. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Part 3. I drove off a cliff on my 19th birthday, accidentally. No drugs involved. I don't remember anything but the feeling. I was happier than I've ever been, and I felt safe and loved. And then I was pulled back, and it was agonizing. I was pretty suicidal for several months because I wanted to go back. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Part 4. I was near death after 2 perforated ulcers caused me to bleed out one night. I had vomited a lot of blood and was basically going into shock. I was in the ambulance and decided that I just wanted to go. I was having trouble breathing, so I decided to just stop breathing and I closed my eyes and it was like falling asleep. Until I felt like someone punched me in my chest and I gasped back to consciousness. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Part 5. Not exactly dying, but I came close. This was way back in the early 80s, just after my parents received some new drug, inhaler. I was having an asthma attack, a really bad one. I was struggling to breathe, and then I clearly remember thinking, it's okay, and I felt peace, accepted that this was it. I was ready to let go, which also was the exact moment my mother gave me the new drug, which helped immediately and made me able to breathe again. When I think back to this, it waters my eyes. It resulted in me not being afraid of dying. At times, it's something I even look forward to. In times of pain, I look forward to dying, but I've got friends, family, and my wife and son I want to grow old with. I want to see how it's going to be in 20, 30 or 40 years, 45 atmospheres. So I'll postpone dying. Once death knocks on my door, I'll go with, willingly, knowing it will be okay. Those who have died before, what did it feel like and how did you die? Part 6. I've only died from overdoses unfortunately, so I don't actually remember it, and the deaths were just blackouts. My worst was being dead 12 minutes before being brought by. Took 4 shots of Narcan and they almost gave up. My GF at the time had my mom on the phone standing outside the ambulance calling her to tell her I died, but before my GF could even get her first word out, they used a defibrillator in a last-ditch effort to see if they could bring me back. And it fucking worked. It fucking worked. I always tear up like no other when I tell/write that story. I'm so grateful for the life I live and the people in it. Happy to be 5 years clean off opiates in 2 weeks. Mentally ill people of Reddit, what is your illness, and can you try to describe what it is like? ADHD and bipolar. I feel like I have a rope around my waist and whenever I start to do something, another thing will yank the rope and pull me over to it. Start that thing and the rope pulls me to something else. Today I was moving laundry to the dryer. I wasn't finished when I had to make sure the dog's water bowl was full. Picked up the bowl and put it on the counter, then I had to check hotel rates at Disney World. Even I have no plans to go to Disney anytime in the near future. Mentally ill people of Reddit, what is your illness, and can you try to describe what it is like? Part 2. Chronic depression and suicidal ideation patient here. People think not killing yourself is as easy as just not committing suicide. In my reality, it was hard. Every day you wake up and you curse the world for not killing you in your sleep. Any daydream moment you have is just a suicidal fantasy. Every moment you're alive, your brain is telling you not to be. Your will is taken from you. You don't have the will to shower, let alone the will to live. It's a sad and miserable existence, and people don't realize it's an illness, let alone that it's treatable. Mentally ill people of Reddit, what is your illness, and can you try to describe what it is like? Part 3. Being bipolar with rapid cycling is kind of like having an exceptionally dumb kid in your head trying to shove the happy peg in the sad-shaped hole. And when it doesn't work, he just keeps slamming the goddamn thing against the hole and telling you it's your fault. Mentally ill people of Reddit, what is your illness, and can you try to describe what it is like? Part 4. OCD. You know how sometimes you get that gut feeling like something might be off? It's like that, but pretty much all the time. For example, if the dog bowls aren't lined up perfectly even, someone will die. Oh, the glasses moved too far left on the shelf? There's gonna be an accident. Oh, you didn't have the exact same thought while you touched the wall as you did yesterday? Better do it again just right or the universe's vibes will be out of whack. It's really a pain in the ass. And teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 1997, 2007, and 2017 students? 97, sarcastic, grungy, smoking more cigarettes, more clique and edgy. 07, petty, attention-starved, overwhelmed, but much nicer. 17, under so many layers of irony and memes they don't even know who they are anymore or care. There's no point in being creative or devolving a personality, anything you could think of has already been done. Teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 1997, 2007, and 2017 students? Part 2. My dad taught middle school from 1968 to 2004. When he retired I asked him what changes he saw in students from the beginning of his teaching career to the end. He answered, the kids never changed. A teenager is always a teenager. The parents, however, changed dramatically. They used to respect teachers and side with us in disciplinary matters, but now they think their kids are perfect and we are wrong. Glad I'm getting out before it gets worse. Teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 1997, 2007, and 2017 students? Part 3. Going to sound like an old man here, but when I was in high school in 97 we had a system where various teachers' aides would photocopy all of the notes, answer keys, homeworks, etc. and put into an unused locker. My whole class, even the future valedictorian, used that locker. I'd imagine cheating efforts have advanced since then. Teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 1997, 2007, and 2017 students? Part 4. As a college instructor, teaching all of them right now, taking those years as 1 year removed from HS graduation. 97, I'm taking school seriously to better myself and my career. 07, I should have not taken all those gap years, C's get degrees. 17, oh shit, if I don't get at least a master's I'm going to be made redundant by a robot. Teachers of Reddit, what's the difference between 1997, 2007, and 2017 students? Part 5. I teach English at a rural high school. The biggest issue for 2017 students is that they have almost zero self-confidence. I don't know if this is a product of culture, or if this is just a fluke with my students. However, they are unwilling to try anything challenging or new without an extreme amount of one-on-one guidance. And that's very difficult to give in a classroom of 30, who are what is almost universally hated in your profession. Part 2. In the US, every few years in the field of secondary education, the new most amazing effective incredible new plan/theory/classroom management tool/lesson plan that's ever been used ever comes along. These new theories/practices are usually the life work of near senile old secondary education professionals, many who haven't been in a classroom with actual kids in decades, and rarely work as intended, if at all. But administration will be like, get used to doing it this way, teachers, every school in the country will be adopting Dr. Sprattlebottom's new method. Lol, they never do, and a couple years later, another fuckwitted thing will be all the rage. Teachers hate this shit. Redditors who have just had their market subs destroyed without warning, how pissed are you? Part 2. Yes, you took away our subs, yes you have reasons for doing this, but what really pisses me off is that you gave no warning at all. You did not message the mods, or give any notice so business could be completed or people made aware, rather you yanked the rug that's alienating hundreds of thousands of users. No class Reddit, you're a bunch of bums. Redditors who have just had their market subs destroyed without warning, how pissed are you? Part 5. They gave no chance for subs to change. Due to the policy announcements. 20 minutes notice then banned? Reddit wanted these subs closed. The policy announcement is a cover. This is censorship, not a policy change. Admins also banned a lot of subs that were not in violation of the policy. If you need more evidence of their motivations, here. Cops of Reddit, what is the most what the fuck happened here moment you've experienced? My dad told me the one time he went to a house and a woman pulled something out of her shopping bag and started hitting him with it. He's trying to stop her but the other officers are all laughing. Finally he realizes that she's beating him with a dildo. Cops of Reddit, what is the most what the fuck happened here moment you've experienced? Part 2. I've never been a cop, but my dad was for several years and I've heard plenty of stories from him. The one that I think fits this thread best came from early in his career when he was still pretty much a rookie. He and some of the other cops got called to a house to follow up on an old woman who was suspected to be dead. When they get there, they find out the woman was a big-time hoarder with stuff stacked to the ceilings and paths leading to each room barely big enough for one person. While my dad is walking around taking all this in, one of the other officers suddenly puts his hand out and tells my dad to stop right where he was. Dad asked why and the officer said, "You almost stepped on her." My dad looked down to find the old woman dead and buried under her own stuff. Cops of Reddit, what is the most what the fuck happened here moment you've experienced? Part 3. In high school I took a criminology course as an elective, and our teacher was a retired officer. When we asked him for his weirdest story, he told us about a repeat offender. The offender was a homeless, homosexual gentleman that had a penchant for exhibitionism. He said he got a call out for someone exposing themselves in public, and when he arrived on scene, he found said gentleman with his ankles to sky, naked as the day he was born, with a half-empty bag of avocados and a can of Crisco. After taking him to the station, they found the other half of the avocados strewn about the back of their cruiser. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 2. I have exploding head syndrome, which is a lot scarier sounding than it actually is, a sleep phase disorder. Basically, when I'm falling asleep I occasionally hear random phantom noises that startle me back awake. For me, I most commonly hear someone shouting my name, an unintelligible brief yell, knocking on the door, or the doorbell. I've noticed over the years that it tends to happen mostly when I'm overtired and or anxious, and I may not have one for months and then have them every other day for a week. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 3. I have neurological issues that make me have phantom feelings. For instance, the last 2 days I've had a burning sensation, like if I'd rested a hot soup bowl on my thigh, but there's nothing there. It can feel like little bug bites, scratches or streaky burns. It's never severe, mostly just weird to feel a distinct sensation for no reason. Sometimes I'll ask a family member to check for marks. The other day I pulled up my shirt, turned around and asked my mom if there was anything on my back. She was like, "Oh my goodness. There is. Looks like one of the cats got you." And we were both so weirdly delighted I'd actually been mauled. Lol. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 4. I'm white and pale AF. Normally avoid sun exposure due to not tolerating heat well and skin cancer running in the family. But earlier this summer I spent quite a bit of time in the desert. I got several shades darker, except for a bunch of random spots that are still white. They weren't covered and had the same amount of sun exposure as the rest of me, but just no color change at all. Biggest spot is on my bicep, but there are random spots everywhere. I've always had a streak like that along my hairline. Hair also grows in white there too, that my mom said was a birthmark. I'm guessing these new spots have always been there too but never apparent because I avoid sun exposure. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 5. I get ocular migraines sometimes. They're not terribly frequent, though maybe once in a while they'll be persistent for a week or so. It's a strange experience. No pain, no headache, but an actual blind spot develops in my vision, that appears sort of like a lightning bolt. It hovers there for about 20 to 30 minutes then gradually subsides. I'll tend to feel a bit weird for maybe an hour or two afterward but then back to normal. They seem to be triggered by a combination of poor sleep, dehydration and, maybe, caffeine plus stress. Have had them off and on for about 10 years probably. Consulted with a couple doctors about it and they've said it's probably nothing to be too worried about unless it starts happening more frequently/intensely. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 6. I get sharp intense pains on the left bottom side of my ribs randomly. I just suck in air and hope my rib didn't puncture my lung. Sometimes it's when I'm working out, but sometimes I'm literally just standing there and whoops popped a lung. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? Part 7. I was born with a disorder that makes crossover motion between both sides of my body more challenging. Riding a bike took me a year to master, for context. The hardest thing for me to do autopilot is stairs, though. If I don't think about it, my body automatically goes one at a time with both feet rather than alternating. What are some of the most cost-efficient meals you can make at home? I lived on shepherd's pie almost exclusively for about a year when I was really broke. Super easy and cheap to make and it has everything you need in it. You can switch up the meat and veggies for variety too. Ground beef or turkey with corn or carrots or peas. You can really throw almost anything in there. What are some of the most cost-efficient meals you can make at home? Part 2. Pasta with olive oil, fresh tomatoes and feta cheese. Tastes delicious. You can prepare a big portion and spread it over 2 days. It is healthy, it does not cost a lot. I know we can go and find other really cheap food to eat, but the health of your stomach might just degrade cup and noodle, frozen food. Health is something that leaves your body and never comes back. Try to save some money on food but never forget about your health. What are some of the most cost-efficient meals you can make at home? Part 3. I lived on this for about a year. For preparation, marinate some meat with soy sauce, can be done while the rice or onions are cooking, and cook rice. Start with oil and onions in a pan. And fry until golden. Add some meat. Usually chicken for me. Stir until meat is lightly cooked. Add the rice and some vegetables. Stir until the meat is thoroughly cooked. Serve, eat. If you clean while you make it, and you try to keep things going while you do other tasks, this can be entirely made in 30 minutes with no dirty dishes other than the bowl you eat and the pan you cook in. What are some of the most cost-efficient meals you can make at home? Part 4. Invest in a slow cooker. You can make a week's worth of food at a go if you're just 1 or 2 people. You can leave it on all day and modern ones are basically impossible to set on fire, and you can make meat so tender it falls apart on your fork. We got ours for $12 at a thrift shop. 13/10. We use the fuck out of that thing. What are some of the most cost-efficient meals you can make at home? Part 5. Chicken and dumplings. That stuff can grow and keep growing to feed a family for a week. When money is really tight I can boil like 3 drumsticks and add a can of peas, some salt, pepper, garlic powder or a packet of chicken ramen flavoring. When I make ramen for the kiddos I do 2 packets ramen, 1 packet flavoring, then I save the other flavoring for chicken soup, and make dumplings out of self-rising flour and milk. I have even used creamer packets I snagged from the gas station before instead of milk. Next night you can add more water, more flavor packet and more dumplings. I've stretched a pot like this for a week before till all the meat was gone. Sometimes if I am lucky and got some cream of chicken soup I toss in and it keeps going. People who ran into the super popular kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? She went to Yale for undergrad, then the University of Edinburgh for MSc and the University of Colorado for medical school. She was very nice, an amazing athlete, extremely intelligent, and very attractive. Everyone liked her. If I remember correctly she won state in women's singles tennis 3 years in a row. I just looked her up and she's in the Department of Emergency Medicine at a prestigious medical school in the US. Good genetics on that one. People who ran into the super popular kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? Part 2. He's still an asshole. I ran into him while on a date with a woman and he just sat down at our table, and while I was in the bathroom he tried to convince my date to leave with him before I got back. At our 10-year reunion he talked shit to all the guys there and tried to get multiple married women to leave with him, including my kid's mom that I had just started dating, who told him to fuck off. Fuck that guy. People who ran into the super popular kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? Part 3. The popular kid bullied me in elementary school, but when we got to middle school and high school we ended up bonding and becoming good friends. He transferred to another high school eventually and we grew more distant but talked from time to time, mostly politics. We couldn't have been more different, but I'll always have a connection to him. I give him credit for bringing me out of my shell in middle school and building me a social life. He died in September of last year from a heroin overdose. He was set to go to law school in November to become a family lawyer, which he told me last time we spoke and was very excited about since we were both children of divorce. Rest in peace, Nick. The whole town misses you every day. People who ran into the super popular kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? Part 4. He's still a cool guy. Calmed down a lot. He was a huge clown, and had a kid. Works a lot, plays in a metal band that is wildly popular in Europe. We are in the US, especially Scandinavia. Will always buy me a drink because we traded pictures of dragons once in Earth Science, and I gave him a lighter once. He didn't have some great downfall or anything, because he wasn't an asshole. Just ADHD. Edit. The band name is Visceral Disengage, I think. I'm not into metal, so I had to take some time to try and figure it out. Maybe wrong about it. I'm not super close friends with this dude. People who ran into the super popular kid from school years later. How did he or she turn out? Part 5. One of the popular guys is now a real estate agent. It's kind of funny, because looking back he always just looked like a real estate agent and still does. I can't explain it, really. When I saw him on LinkedIn I just kind of said to myself, huh, he looks like a real estate agent. One of the popular girls ended up committing suicide. Postpartum depression. She was always real nice, it sucked getting that news. One of my buddies, he was more of the popular because he had all the weed popular, hung out with the shitheads of the school. All of whom were either in jail or dead. I don't think he ever got locked up as he ended up having a kid, losing a lot of weight, and putting time and effort into supporting his new family. It was great seeing that at my wife's 10-year reunion. She was a year behind me. He was on his way on closing on a house. Women of Reddit, what things that men find unattractive about themselves do you find very attractive, and why? I feel like some dudes lack the confidence to wear certain things, or feel they'll look stupid if they dress well. I'm a barista and we have a group of regular guys who come in. Once one of them was getting teased about wearing gray tailored trousers with a light gray plaid detail. The other guys asked what I thought of them, expecting me to join in, but I just said I thought he looked great and men should be encouraged to put in a little effort with their clothes. His bum looked A-OK. Women of Reddit, what things that men find unattractive about themselves do you find very attractive, and why? Part 2. When they do anything unmanly and are at peace with it. Examples: wearing pink, singing in the car/shower, talking about their feelings, using body washes/shampoos that aren't just the cheap generic for men shit, wearing jewelry, funning over plants or animals. It shows me that they are mature, comfortable with themselves, and don't equate femininity with inferiority. Women of Reddit, what things that men find unattractive about themselves do you find very attractive, and why? Part 3. Admitting that they don't know something. A big turn-off for me is when a guy pretends they know about something because they think it will impress me or think I'll look down on them for not knowing. It's okay to admit you're unfamiliar about something, and I truly appreciate the honesty behind that and find it incredibly refreshing. What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Okay, I know it was bad to dump you while you were in intensive care, but you were really bumming me out. You're a lot better now, though, so it's all good. Was in and out of critical condition and had several emergency ops over the course of 5 weeks in hospital. He dumped me over the phone while I was lying in my hospital bed. After I was discharged he waited 2 months then tried to come back. He also never came to visit once. He said he didn't want to see me that way as it wasn't very attractive. Told him to get fucked. What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 2. He broke up with me by sort of ghosting me after 2 years together. He wouldn't show up when we had plans, then text me later and apologize and say sweet things, but go on to ignore my calls for a week. He set his status to single on Facebook, so I figured it was done and deleted him. Almost a year later he sent me a text saying he was sorry, that he was willing to talk and answer any questions I had, and that he regretted what he did because I was the second best girlfriend he'd ever had. I shit you not. I told him I didn't need his answers and didn't want to be his friend. He never bothered me after that. What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 3. She cheated. I said so long, get out of my house. She did, moved in with this guy. She showed up a few weeks later with her cat and some belongings and said she made a mistake, Wants me back because she needs me to take care of her. Sorry, what? You're trying to move in while cheating on me and simultaneously asking me to pamper you? What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 4. My phone rings. Hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm getting married this afternoon and I'm pregnant, so now is your last chance. 2 years later my phone rings. Hey, I'm pregnant again and getting married again. This is your real last chance. What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 5. If we break up, it's just a matter of time before you ask for your laptop back, and I use it for school, so I'm going to have to drop out and my kids are going to be raised in poverty. Do you really want that on your conscience? What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 6. I once dated this guy who literally carved my name into his hand. He said he did it because he couldn't afford a tattoo. And when I broke up with him for it, he said, "But your name is carved into my hand." I'm not sure if that was supposed to make me stay, or if he at that moment realized how stupid he was. What's the dumbest thing an ex ever said to try and win you back? Part 7. My new girlfriend is terrible. I miss you a lot. Like, I sometimes regret leaving you. You're so much better than her. Just so you know, I'm going to dump her soon. After we go on vacation, because I'm using her miles to buy my ticket. Like, there are so many things wrong with that. And the vacation was 2 months away. I told him he had made decisions, so I didn't feel bad for the fact he missed me and never spoke to him again. People who have depression, what was the first sign that let you know that you have depression? Talking shit to myself. It was an early sign that I completely ignored and didn't get treated for years. I thought I was just being a successful person. I wanted to do well in life, so I was hard on myself to keep myself on track. When I didn't live up to the standards I set for myself, I beat myself up for it. Because of course that's what you do. If you don't have high expectations for yourself, then you must be some sort of soft special snowflake who wants to have the world slow down for them instead of rising to the occasion. Right? It wasn't until my life went to total shit that I had a therapist tell me to give myself a fucking break already. What I was doing wasn't helping me and was hurting my relationships with people and my health. People who have depression, what was the first sign that let you know that you have depression? Part 2. I'm bipolar, and that makes me experience both manic episodes and depression from time to time. So once when I was in my intermission, neither manic, nor depressive episode, kinda normal state, I decided to finally make a checklist of symptoms that could help me find out that my episode is getting closer, so that I would contact my doctor, start using special meds, and just prepare my routine to another mood swing. I know it's more than just a one sign, but since I'm constantly getting on and off with my depression, there could be different first signs every cycle. People who have depression, what was the first sign that let you know that you have depression? Part 3. When I realized I wasn't really feeling anything anymore. The first time it hit was when my grandpa died. I remember talking to my mom on the phone. She is bawling, and I literally didn't feel a thing about it. Still don't, and haven't really felt genuine/lasting emotion for anything in quite a while now. What historical people are generally seen as heroes but were horrible people in reality? Maybe not horrible in all actions in his life, but Dr. Seuss caused his cancer-stricken wife to commit suicide by cheating on her. This was her suicide note. Dear Ted, what has happened to us? I don't know. I feel myself in a spiral, going down, into a black hole from which there is no escape, no brightness. And loud in my ears from every side I hear, failure, failure, failure. I love you so much. I am too old and enmeshed in everything you do and are, that I cannot conceive of life without you. My going will leave quite a rumor, but you can say I was overworked and overwrought. Your reputation with your friends and fans will not be harmed. Sometimes think of the fun we had all through the years. What historical people are generally seen as heroes but were horrible people in reality? Part 2. Literally everyone. Nobody's perfect. Except maybe Mr. Rogers. MLK was an adulterer. Mother Teresa was a bit of a sadist. John Lennon liked to hit. Gandhi was dandy, but liked little girls and letting his wife die. Hitler, even though he killed Hitler, had a dark side. Churchill didn't give a fuck about starving Indians. Stalin was a wee bit paranoid. FDR refused to support an anti-lynching bill. Teddy Roosevelt was a bloodthirsty maniac. I could go on. What historical people are generally seen as heroes but were horrible people in reality? Part 3. Henry Ford did some good things that endeared him to history, like implemented a shorter work week and paid a living wage, but like all magnates from that time period, he did a lot of questionable stuff like inspecting his workers' homes to make sure they were living up to his Christian/American ideals, supported rabidly anti-Semitic publications, treated his son like shit, and of course engaged in some business screw-overs. The American Experience episode about him is fascinating. Edit. Changed Christian ideals to Christian/American ideals. Edit. Removed part about screwing over Dodge Brothers. What historical people are generally seen as heroes but were horrible people in reality. Part 4. Augustus. He is taught as a nice, fair ruler, but that motherfucker was brutal. If you were his enemy you were killed, quite similar to Stalin. Cicero, for example, was always against him, so he had his hands nailed to Senate door. Don't get me wrong, he was excellent at ruling. Caesar was trusting and lost the support of much of the Senate and was killed for it. Augustus made sure his Senate feared him, and as a result the people loved him and the empire prospered. What are some of the best subreddits for self-improvement? Serious r/curly hair. If you have difficulty with frizzy, curly, wavy hair etc. Many people actually have curly or wavy hair but don't realize it because it's not taken care of properly and is unhealthy/too dry. They learn what their parents teach them in regards to hair care, but simple changes to the routine, such as how you rinse out your conditioner, and specific product you use, even the type of towel and method you use to dry your hair, make a huge difference. I thought I had straight slightly frizzy hair, but turns out my hair was too dry. Changed my method and now I have waves. My daughter went from mad scientist to beautiful curls. What are some of the best subreddits for self-improvement? Serious, Part 2. There are some great suggestions on here that I never knew about. But it's also worth saying that one of the best things you can do to improve your life and situation is to spend drastically less time on the internet, and use that time wisely doing all the things you already know you're meant to do that most people don't. Exercise, meditation, cooking proper meals, etc. Some people manage one or two of these kinds of things regularly, very few manage all of them. Those that do are typically rewarded immensely by a fulfilling and happy life. You've got 1 year until you move out of your parents' house. You have no adult skills. What are the most important things to learn? Context: I'm 21 and currently have a year left in college. I have very strict parents. I have to ask their permission to do everything, and there are several things I can't do, such as visit my boyfriend or ride in a car with friends. I have a driver's license but can't really drive. I want to move out after graduation and go to med school a bit far from home, but I want to know what skills to work on in the meantime. People who encountered killer clowns during the 2016 clown craze. What went down? In 2016 I was a senior in high school, driving home from my friend's house late one night, just before 11 p.m. My curfew. The road before you get to my neighborhood was a 2-lane road, trees on either side, no lights at all, and the speed limit was roughly 40 miles per hour. I'm driving down it and a scarily dressed clown jumped out of the woods and maybe 2 feet into the road. I had to swerve, I screamed, and it indeed scared the absolute shit out of me. Coming home late and driving past the place where it happened afterwards always sketched me out too. People who encountered killer clowns during the 2016 clown craze. What went down? Part 2. Not exactly a killer clown, but some idiot yokels started harassing young kids at the school where I work. They weren't killing anyone, they didn't have weapons, but they were dressing up as clowns and popping out of bushes or out from behind cars and scaring little kids walking to the bus. As teachers we did what we could as far as initiating a buddy system for walking, engaging more crossing guards, and that sort of thing. But apparently some local dads camped out, found these literal/figurative clowns, and beat the piss out of them. Then we didn't have a clown problem anymore. People who encountered killer clowns during the 2016 clown craze. What went down? Part 3. I got out the car ready to fight, he approached, and as I went to do the initial push, had a bad day and I was sick of all the shit these guys were causing. He just stopped, took his mask off and apologized. We chatted for a short moment and he was massively depressed and he was doing it as an outlet for his intense emotions. We exchanged details and about a week later we met up for a drink and a chat. Nice dude. He committed suicide in 2019 and what made it worse is that it was that year we fell out of touch. I just assumed he moved on to bigger things. Sad story, but you asked. People who encountered killer clowns during the 2016 clown craze. What went down? Part 4. Came home to see a clown walking around my neighborhood. As I got out of car to bring in groceries, clown sees me and stands there to watch me, to freak me out I guess. But little did they know I was having a bad day, so I didn't care much about them. Just when I started bringing my bags in, one of them broke and my food dropped all over the ground. That's when I broke down and started crying. Without missing a beat, the clown came running towards me to check I was okay and helped me bring my stuff in. Guy was super nice and I gave him my candy bars that I bought for myself to feel better. And before anyone asks, my sadness overwhelmed me. I couldn't hold it anymore, so the tears decided to come out at a weird time. People who encountered killer clowns during the 2016 clown craze. What went down? Part 5. I was chilling at a local park with some of my friends when I decided to walk through the park and trail to McDonald's. I had just gotten to the trail entrance when I heard rustling in the bushes on my left. Keep in mind it was about 9 p.m. and dark, and this type of thing didn't happen since I was there almost every day. Needless to say, I ran back to my friends and told them what happened. They were all pissed, and as a group we ran back to the bushes and started searching. We heard a quiet giggle and it confirmed my suspicions, so I yelled, "Come out, pussy!" No response, but about 5 seconds later a rusty razor blade comes flying out of the bushes and hit me in the chest. We were all spooked, so we ran off. Next day on news, an elderly man got stabbed by a man dressed in a clown costume. Not fun. What baby name immediately makes you lose all respect for the parents, and why? I used to be on Tumblr back in the day of Supernatural's glory, and someone named their poor child Steel. I get it, you like the ship. But you have an actual child that is totally gonna be pissed you named your kid after a fictional relationship on a show about demons and other supernatural things. The lack of respect or forethought. Like, what baby name immediately makes you lose all respect for the parents, and why? Part 2. My brother once had clients named Jerry and Mary Derryberry. We didn't believe him, so he took a picture of whatever account papers. Don't even remember what his job was at the time, who gives a shit? But the series of events to have a married couple be named Jerry and Mary Derryberry is just so delicious. If you could breed two animals together to defy the laws of nature, what new animal would you create? An octopus and a jaguar. Think about it, a super stealthy, highly intelligent killing machine that can camouflage itself and move silently. Climb trees? Check. Ambush from any position on the ground? Check. Hunt in water and on land? Check. Octaguar for the win. That or a hippopoctopus would be the most ruthless. Cheaters of Reddit, why are you currently cheating on yourself? Not currently cheating because I got my shit together. I cheated because I'm a gay woman. It took me an embarrassingly long time to realize it. I got married to a great guy, but we obviously had no sexual chemistry. I was starved for intimacy and was starting to feel like I was going insane. Cheating was wrong, but it helped me make the biggest realization of my life. I'm happier and he's happier. What is the darkest, creepiest Reddit thread/post you have seen? Serious. A reply to the thread yesterday about scary things that were 100% true, that has since been removed. Basically, some guy tricked kids into reenacting hangings for a movie he was making, but instead he actually hanged them. The comment contained a live leak video where you could see the kids' reactions when they realized they were actually being hanged. What is the darkest, creepiest Reddit thread/post you have seen? Serious. Part 4. Gotta be the legal advice thread where the guy is considering divorcing his wife and wants advice on how to secure custody of his children. He stops posting for a while, then drops an update thread about how his wife found out and killed both kids, and maybe herself. People linked local news articles about the whole thing proving it was real. He has since deleted all the posts, though there are archives. Incredibly sad situation, and probably the worst thing that I've seen on here. Who's an incredibly successful singer that's not a good singer at all? The Red Hot Chili Peppers are my favorite band. I've seen them on several tours, I have all their vinyl records, and I've chased after John Frusciante's guitar tone for a long time. That said, Anthony Kiedis is not a good singer at all by his own admission, but he's perfect for the band and the music they make. Who's an incredibly successful singer that's not a good singer at all? Part 2. Probably an obvious one, but Jared Leto. Went to a 30STM concert back when they were hot, and he did this thing where he took forever to come out for his set, and the stage manager came out and announced something like, "Jared isn't feeling well, we're not sure if he's gonna be able to perform." Then Jared gets rolled out in a wheelchair and he stands up like he's powering through for the fans and says he needs the audience's help to sing the chorus with the high notes to his hit song. So his whole set is pretty much one big audience sing-along. Fast forward to a month later when I was at music festival they were in, and they pulled the exact same shtick right down to the wheelchair and everything. Only difference was while the audience ate it up the first time I saw it, now there were a fair number of boos and groans. I knew after that 30STM wouldn't last long. Lol. Who's an incredibly successful singer that's not a good singer at all? Part 3. Most prolific singers have some talent, whether it's shunted away by execs or themselves is another story. My vote is for Greg Graffin of Bad Religion. Love the band, they make great music and his voice does work for their music, but that man has approximately one register that he can sing in, and by God he's made a career off of that for 40 years. Gamers, what are you playing to pass the time? I'm working through my second playthrough of the Mass Effect trilogy, this time with all the DLCs that grant new missions. I played it 3 to 4 years ago, WoDLC, and I've been wanting to do another run with the extra content for a while now. I figured since everyone's supposed to be in quarantine, I should finally get around to doing another me playthrough. If the countries of Europe were high school students, what would they be like? Belgium would be twins, I guess, Sometimes they hang out together. When it comes down to sports, sometimes one complains that he has to pay for the other his lunch. Always eating fries/chocolate/waffles, getting wasted on the weekends. In class they always sit in between Germany and France, and when those two fight each other, somehow Belgium gets beaten up the worst. Often hangs out with the Netherlands and Luxembourg, though they like making fun of each other. If you could breed two animals together to defy the laws of nature, what new animal would you create? Part 3. My best friend and I did a science project on this. A squid and a pig. The Puid. Bacon-flavored calamari. A new, gourmet food source. For vegans, however, they could also make cute, cuddly guard pets. Imagine breaking into a home and instead of hearing the growl of a German shepherd, the slow, pulling sounds of several sets of suction cups on the walls surrounding you. Echoing in the darkness during the wee hours. Seeing tentacle writhe in the dark as you're unsure what kind of abomination is rushing at you. Also hentai. Drive-through window workers of Reddit. What's the strangest thing you've seen in someone's car? A girl came through one time with her cat in the car. Like a typical cat in a car, it freaked out when she stopped at the window. When it tried to climb out, she rushed to put up the window and the cat's head got stuck. For a split second I thought she was gonna decapitate it. Frown. Luckily she stopped, lowered the window and grabbed the cat. It was so close. I can still picture the look of horror on that cat's face. Hope she took better care of it. Drive-through window workers of Reddit. What's the strangest thing you've seen in someone's car? Part 2. This is the opposite of what you're asking, but in a McDonald's drive-through, through the screen, I watched the cashier dip her finger into my drink and taste it. And I don't think she did it maliciously, she was making sure it was the right drink, I guess, but WTF. My dad saw a Sonic cashier do that to his milkshake though, and that was 100% the cashier being a creep. Drive-through window workers of Reddit. What's the strangest thing you've seen in someone's car? Part 3. Worked drive-through for a local burger joint. Didn't really know what I was doing, but the crackhead girl who normally worked had called in. Dude pulls up to get his greasy-ass food and his wife is full-on naked in the other side of the car. The dude handed me a business card and told me I could have 10% off because we were his favorite burger store, and then they drove off like that awkward conversation never happened. Went straight back to flipping burgers. Drive-through window workers of Reddit. What's the strangest thing you've seen in someone's car? Part 4. I've seen a penis, a gun on a lap, dozens of folks smoking weed, but the best had to be the man on the mobility scooter. He would come through on his mobility scooter and order, and he was mean. This lady in a van apparently got closer to his scooter than he thought she should have. He started screaming at her. For whatever reason, she decides to get out of her van to discuss this with him. He took the flag from the back of his scooter and began hitting her with it. Police were called, and he was arrested. His mobility scooter was impounded. I'll never forget watching it on the flatbed of a tow truck. Drive-through window workers of Reddit. What's the strangest thing you've seen in someone's car? Part 5. I was on the other end of this. In high school, I had received a giant blow-up dick as a gag gift. This thing was at least 3 feet tall. Once we had it strapped in the back seat of the car while going through a drive-through. I could see the expression on the dude's face as he handed us our food like, is that a giant dick? What's the strongest opinion you held that you later changed? In high school I thought all fast food/retail workers were losers that couldn't do anything better with their lives. In college I got a retail job with the campus bookstore and found out that most are just people trying to make some money and go home. There were still some losers, but now I realize those people are in every field. I worked much harder to be nice to people in those positions now. What's the strongest opinion you held that you later changed? Part 2. I had a problem with gay people adopting. A stranger on the web changed my mind with one simple sentence: every child deserves to be loved. The thought of a kid wanting parents and parents wanting a kid and both being denied because of some sort of misplaced idea that the child needs one parent of each sex makes any argument against moot. What's the strongest opinion you held that you later changed? Part 3. Weed is fucking stupid. I hate stoners, it turns out. Not weed. Motherfuckers in my college, all they would ever do is talk about weed. If they weren't currently high and talking about how high they are, they were talking about times they got high. That or they were talking about how they wanted to get high. They were also rude assholes. So yay, my opinion for ages was fuck weed. Now that it actually lets me get some decent sleep, I'm all for weed. Still hate stoners however. You are teleported into a game of your choice for a month. If you die in the game, you die in real life. But whatever you collect in the game you can keep in real life. Skills, magic, items, pets, clothes. What game do you pick? I may have to make an argument for Neverwinter or Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind. Some seriously large magic systems. Though arguments could be made for a number of superhero games as well for powers. Anyone who thought of money first didn't think this through well. Superpowers and magic could get you enormous amounts of money after the fact. What are some crazy facts people don't seem to know? Pretty much everything you see about space in movies is wrong. Space is not cold, nor is it hot. It's a vacuum, a perfect insulator. So anything exposed to hard space can only cool by radiating heat, which is very slow, or gain heat by exposure to the sun, pretty fast. Overheating is a far bigger risk in space than freezing. A small hole in the space station could be plugged with duct tape or even your finger over the hole. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? Part 2. When your partner is substantially more in love with you than you are with them. Couple this with an emotionally unstable personality and you've got a very, very messy breakup. I've dated guys who turned out to be assholes. Those breakups were easy. Breaking up with the guy who was head over heels in love with me, absolutely crazy about me, and completely emotionally dependent on me, that was 1,000 times harder. He was one of the sweetest, kindest people I've ever known, but the relationship was clearly untenable for a variety of reasons. We were only together a few months, and over a year later I was still breaking down every time I thought about him. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? Part 3. Ultra manipulation. Honey, let's stay, and it's not that I don't trust you, but I just want you to myself. 6 months later, why did your coworker buy you a coffee? I know he's a male and you're straight, but still. I just went through all the bad signs and I'm broken from it. Emotional abuse is very real. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? Part 4. Jealousy and trust issues. The girl that I dated during university accused me of having a gay love affair with my best friend because I went home to visit him and hang out/party for the weekend. I called her on Saturday morning to chat as a normal boyfriend would. The conversation started off normal, then it goes something like this. Her, where are you sleeping? Me, on the couch. Her, are you sure? Me, yes. Her, you can tell me. Me, what are you talking about? Her, I know what's going on. Me, what? What are you talking about? Her, I know you two are having an affair. Why else would you go visit him for the weekend when you could have stayed with me? It went downhill from there. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? Part 5. When I start to get the feeling that the person just really wants to be in a relationship, and it isn't really anything about me, specifically, that they like. This is usually apparent because they tend to move very quickly and acting like a boyfriend/girlfriend, they have a track record of being serial monogamists, and they don't spend any time alone before getting into new relationships. This is usually a huge turnoff to me. I want someone who is secure in being alone, who doesn't seem desperate, and who also finds me unique. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? Part 6. When you find out years into the relationship that she has mounds and mounds of debt and credit cards that she never told you about. We went in to buy a house together and I was approved for the loan, and I asked the lady doing the mortgage, could we put my fiancé on the loan, and she then looked up her credit and told me that if she was put on the loan it will not go through. This led to a long talk about department and money management. Things did not work out for other reasons, but this did a good bit of damage to the relationship. What are the worst deal breakers in relationships? When you not only disagree, but you're thinking in completely different ways, so it's impossible to reconcile. For example, one person sees the relationship as a partnership, and wants to resolve and understand problems. The other feels insecure in relationships, and sees them as battles, that they have to try to win, or have the upper hand at. In this example, the second person will gameplay and will try to hurt and bring down the first, because they all perceive the first to have been winning, maybe to be out of their league. The first person will try to resolve the conflict, and will be seen by the second as either losing, or trying to win by doing so. It just goes around and around. What do people often underestimate? Part 2. Children. Just because they're young doesn't mean they don't understand. They watch and they'll learn way more than adults are usually willing to admit. If you're a person who a kid looks up to, your influence on their actions and behavior as a whole is huge. Give them credit and challenge them to learn more. I believe most people would be surprised at what those little people are capable of. What do people often underestimate? Part 3. How much they eat. What do people often underestimate? How easy it is to be manipulated. Everyone think they'll see it coming until you're isolated from all of your friends, and think that's okay. 0717. The reason I made this was a mistake. But it has merit by itself. I'm ashamed it's so successful, really, because I can't delete it. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 2. This was around 15 years ago, but there was a sheriff's deputy that was seemingly a really cool guy. Friendly, cracked a lot of great jokes, etc. He was working at the local high school as a school resource officer and was apparently almost universally well regarded. Well, it turns out that he repeatedly raped a 14-year-old. He told the boy that he'd kill his parents if he reported the officer. I don't remember all the details, but I believe this went on for weeks or months before it was found out and the officer was arrested and eventually went to prison. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 3. This is more comical than dark. A house burned down in this small town of 600 population. 1 block from the fire station. It being a volunteer fire department, nobody was at the station. They tried to get the pumper truck out, but one of the volunteers had run it into a brick building the week before and it was still at the shop. We're still undecided whether the house owner burned it down for the insurance. Strange that there was nothing valuable inside. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 4. About 10 years ago a lot of homeless people disappeared and when the police did the investigation they found out a guy was kidnapping and eating those people. Police found his hideout and found a half-eaten body and bones from another person. People don't like to talk about it but everyone knows what happened. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 5. Oh, I have a doozy. Short version. Popular kids in high school run a secret towel fight club and accidentally kill one of their friends in the house of a local politician, who proceeds to bury the story. Towel fight club. Tape towels over your hands and beat each other up. It's supposed to be just boxing but it sounds like they got out of control and hardly could call it that. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 6. This is a sad one to me. There was an older couple here who ran a halfway house for troubled kids who'd recently gotten out of juvie. They fostered a few as well. They were loved in the community, wonderful people. One of them had an older brother who was a gangbanger in the nearest big city. During a visit, he snuck his 15-year-old younger bro a handgun. Younger bro ended up holding up a local gas station and killed 3 people. One of them was my friend's cousin. The foster parents lost whatever credentials they needed to do what they did, the kids went back into the system, and the giant house has been abandoned since around 2009. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 7. There's a half-submerged submarine from the war in the bay where I live. You can walk out to it when the tide is out. In the late 80s somebody cut open the hatch, one of the only visible parts left sticking out the sand, climbed in and was having a look around. The tide came in and he drowned. If I remember rightly the whole hatch was filled with cement, then welded shut to stop it happening again. Edit, words. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 8. Our local pizza place was a known KKK hub. Everyone knew it. And still to this day, if you Google, town, KKK the first thing that pops up is this pizza shop. They had some nasty-ass pizza too. What is your small town dark secret story? Part 9. About 30 years ago a local 8-year-old girl went missing during the annual carnival downtown. After a few days they found a suspect that was seen near the girl right before she went missing. The guy confessed to her horrific murder and rape and torture. He was the kid's next-door neighbor and friend to the kid's dad. I'll spare the details but it was really bad. He was convicted and sentenced to 40 years or so. After 8 years he was paroled and returned to the same house with his parents, right next door. Laws were a bit different then, to the family of the girl and former friend. About a week later the man never showed up at his parole office. His parents filed a missing persons report. Rumor has it that several friends of the victim's father took care of him. If you talk to them they just say that they are sure that he won't be back. What is your small town dark secret story? We had a crazy rich guy from the 1600 to 1700s who saw people robbing a grave one night so decided that when he died he would be laid to rest in the roof of a barn behind his house. He believed he'd only be dead for 30 years so requested that they lock the barn and put the key in his coffin so he could get out but nobody could get in. He requested that whoever inherited his house, fortune and belongings would have to give them back to him when he resurrected. He did actually get his wish but of course he was never resurrected. People stole his bones and his house is a dentist now. This is also the town where that lady went viral going ham in the alcohol aisle in Aldi a few weeks ago. What sounds bad on paper but actually works? Richmond, California, the city paying up to $1,000 a month for young gang members' good behavior. The program offers guidance, jobs and support, as well as a cash stipend if they stay out of trouble and take steps to improve their lives. In 2007, there were 47 homicides in Richmond. In 2014, there were 11. What weird thing does your body do that you just accept? I have spinal stenosis. Basically my vertebrae are thickening and pressing against my spinal cord in my upper neck and lower spine. It causes numbness in my extremities and I have to do special stretches to help relieve the pressure but man sometimes I'll sit for a little bit too long and it's like my feet don't exist. I'll try to walk but it's like walking on stumps. Back to the stretches and within 10 minutes the feeling returns. I used to do 100-mile bicycle rides, now I'm lucky if I can walk 3 blocks without tripping and falling. What widely accepted fact do you know is wrong? Part 2. That yawning simply indicates that you're tired. Sometimes you do yawn as your body is preparing for sleep, but it's more likely that's because we react with a yawn when changing our physical state. This could also be when you become more alert and awake or when you're breathing differently. That's definitely not the only reason we yawn. It could be for getting extra oxygen into our blood, a reaction to being bored and not getting much stimulation, or for cooling down our brain. What widely accepted fact do you know is wrong? That a mother bird will abandon her young if she smells the scent of humans on them. This is not true. Find a baby on the ground beneath its nest? Gently scoop it up and return it to its nest, and the parents will continue to care for it. What would you do if you had enough balls to do it? Part 2. The pastor of the church where I'm organist refuses to turn on the air conditioning, saying that it's too expensive to run and that the noise interferes with his sermon. Meanwhile, the people in this building, which seats 1,400, are fanning themselves and annoyed, expressing their displeasure. So, if I had any less restrained, I'd crack open the locked cover on the thermostat controls and turn it on during the service. And the people would cheer. What would you do if you had enough balls to do it? Part 4. Talk to the super sexy lifeguard at the beach I go to every day. He doesn't speak English and I don't speak Italian, but we both seem interested. Sigh. Update. As he passed by today I said ciao bello and he smiled and told me I had beautiful eyes. This much I could understand. Although it may not be much, I'm still so happy and thank you all for the encouragement. What's the biggest thing people perceive wrongly about you? When people first meet me they see that I'm a dwarf and then freak out about not offending me. I blame media depictions of dwarfs losing their shit. It makes people think that I'm going to explode if they simply say the word short around me or something. It makes conversations needlessly awkward and fraught. I don't care, man, just chill. What's the creepiest thing you've come across on Reddit? I can't find it anywhere. But does anyone remember something where there was a girl by herself at home? She was talking to her friend on the phone while laying on her bed. She then dropped her phone and when she was picking it up, she saw a reflection of a face underneath the bed. She proceeded to talk to her friend and calmly say she was going to have a shower and hung up the call. She ran into the bathroom, locked the door and jumped out of the window. She called the cops. Later they arrived and arrested a man who was standing right outside that door holding a knife. This really freaks me out to this day. There was an article on it too. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 2. I was at a bowling alley with some friends when I was around 10 and while dicking around I found out that a skee ball machine's coin holder was unlocked. I played a couple free games and then when no one was looking I just put the $2 to $3 worth of quarters in my pocket. I feel kinda bad for it because it is illegal but the cops haven't knocked down my door yet so I think I'm in the clear. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 3. I put the hottest hot sauce I could find in my lunch that I brought to work to find out who had been stealing my food. I really didn't care about the food, I wanted my vintage Tupperware back. That shit still had a few thousand more uses in it. The food thief got fired and I only got one of my containers back. The fucker had been throwing them away after eating my lunch. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 4. My co-workers and I would regularly steal from the frozen yogurt store we worked at. We were all college students, even the managers, and the owner was a huge dick. He would keep the tips that people left us and never gave them back in our paychecks so we stopped reporting most of tips. It was a self-serving store and someone figured out how to clear the order after weighing so that it looked like a legit person. We would give away free yogurt to our friends and take for ourselves. We also had a rewards program in that store that would give you cash for every certain amount of money spent. Most of the time customers wouldn't ask to input the points so I would input my own number. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 5. When I was 19 and in the McDonald's drive-thru my friend and I ordered a water, it was pretty busy. Get to the front and the guy starts handing me someone else's order, Big Mac, 2 McChickens, fries and a couple drinks, so I played along and got a free meal. I was a young poor college student and high as a kite, but it was still really shitty. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 6. A few years ago, I played RuneScape, and I wanted a really cool skin. Well, you could take surveys and such to earn a secondary currency and buy the skin with that. So, I created a fake email, and zoomed in on a random house in Utah. A lot of the surveys offer magazines and free samples and such at the end. So, some guy sitting in Utah somewhere has piles and piles of health magazines and baby wipe samples on his doorstep, with probably more coming every day, all addressed to a beautiful human being by the name of Flarg Blarg. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 7. My brother worked at an arcade called Hollywood Connections. Around Christmas time they had a Christmas party for the employees and their families. For the party they had buckets of tokens you could use to play any of the games, but you had to return the leftovers at the end of the night. I filled both of my cargo short pockets full of coins and snuck out to stash them in my mom's car. A couple months later my third grade class went on a field trip to the same arcade and I sold the tokens for $1 instead of the usual price of 3 for $1. I made $85 that day. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Part 8. Some guy at work undid the quick release on my bicycle's wheels and I didn't realize they were loose until I went down a curb and the front wheel rattled, nearly came off. The next day I confronted my colleagues about it but nobody fessed. Later that day the saddle went missing but I found it on a shelf near the tools. That night, I used epoxy resin to affix box cutter blades to the underside of all the quick releases on the bike. All of them. The next day one of the guys at work cut his hand up real bad and got sacked for dicking around with my property. Smile. What's the most unethical thing you've done IRL? Many times when I was a kid and the original Bionicles, Lego, were still being sold, I would bring a pen and paper to the store, and write down all the codes, shown on the outside of the boxes, for all the Bionicles on the shelf. I'd then take the paper home, and redeem all the codes for my account on the Bionicle website, giving me free points and effectively rendering the codes for the whole store's inventory of Bionicles useless to anyone else wanting to buy one. What's the worst pain you've ever physically felt? Part 2. Back in 2012 I had an impacted wisdom tooth which got infected and caused half of my face to swell up like a baseball. It was extremely painful, apart from the impacted tooth. Also earlier in my life I dislocated my jaw, which from time to time would come unhinged. The swelling from this infection caused it to dislocate so far that I was unable to open my mouth at all further than a few millimeters without extreme pain. So that's a horrible toothache, severe nerve pain from the swelling, and a mouth I couldn't open all in one. I couldn't even eat for like 2 months. I couldn't sleep because it was too painful. Worst shit ever. What's the worst pain you've ever physically felt? Part 3. When I was in the army, I got discharged after a training exercise. We got back to base and I had to take a shit. I jumped down from the truck with all my gear including my Carl Gustav and both my kneecaps dislodged on impact. Took me 2 years to retrain to a level where I didn't randomly tipped over, once a month or so, and 6 years later I rejoined the army, deployed to Helmand and trashed what was left of them. But yeah, the fall and pop broke my world. And this is coming from a guy with a big bite make in the face, who has tried stepping a rusty bent nail clean through the foot and has lost a testicle. What's the worst pain you've ever physically felt? Had a really bad ingrown toenail. Got super infected and had to get the nail removed. Doctor tries to freeze my foot, he tested it with a needle poke and I told him I could still feel it. He doesn't believe me, my mom tells me I'm being overdramatic. Doctor proceeds to rip the nail out. I screamed bloody murder. What's the worst thing you've stepped on with bare feet? My time to shine. My mom's dog used to have pretty bad IBS so accidents around the house weren't that uncommon. One day she had eaten a slug and passed it out the other end, think of a slug perfectly encased in diarrhea. I stepped right in it. In bare feet. Dog shit and slug straight in between my toes like the worst kind of jelly. God, even thinking about it makes me want to heave. As I started hopping around the room violently gagging and begging my sister to help me, the whole thing was dangling off my foot. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 2. I broke my pelvis in a bike accident on my birthday. Instead of the big party she had been planning for me all week, we spent the day in the hospital. The ER's advice was basically sucks to be you, next few weeks are gonna hurt a lot, good luck. I almost passed out from the pain trying to get myself into the car on the way home. Cut to later that evening. I looked at her, said girl. I need to poop. Before I knew it she was helping me walk to the bathroom, taking my pants off, and ever so gently helping to lower me on the toilet so that I didn't need to put any weight on my pelvis. That was about 3 years ago, we got married last month. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 3. I had some medical issues and had peed myself at work. We had a date later that day, and I told him what had happened, and that I was sorry if I wasn't in the best mood cause I was still upset about it. He proceeded to tell me story after embarrassing story about himself until I was laughing. He's the best. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 4. So I have intense anxiety about eating in front of people I don't know, it's why I specifically avoid restaurants on first dates. With my current boyfriend, I thought the first date would only take a few hours so I wouldn't get hungry again. We ended up hanging out from about 5 p.m. to midnight and got some very generously portioned Chinese takeout halfway through. I scarfed the entire thing without a second thought until he said, in slight awe, "You ate that entire thing?" I was so shocked at myself and realized I'd never been that comfortable around someone before. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 5. I moved to another country. She flew out to visit a few months later. When it was time for her to fly back, we were sitting together at the airport in tears at the thought of being separated again. She squeezed my hand and said, "You know. If you asked, I'd say yes." I didn't know before that moment. I had hoped, but I didn't know. Silver anniversary coming up. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 6. I almost didn't answer the ad, because I was planning to move cities in a few months, and didn't need a long-term relationship. The night I first spoke to him, my grandpa had died. He understood and said we'd make plans then after I got back. He texted a couple times to make sure I was okay while I was out of town for the funeral. He was considerate and not at all pushy, and I appreciated the way he did it more than I could say. We finally met, and inside of an hour, we had 3 more dates planned, and I'm telling stories that end with the particular hairpin turns my sense of humor demands, and he arrived at the punchlines before me. And that, when I realized I had found someone who really gets me, is when I knew. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 7. I was in a bad place when we met. I really didn't want a relationship even though he was a really good guy. We met online and talked for a month or so before actually meeting in person. He's a big guy, so when he hugged me it was all soft and squishy and comfortable. He rubbed my back and I realized, fuck, it's all over now. We've been together for 4 years. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 8. Taking her to visit my mom at the cemetery. I lost her when I was about 13. When we started dating in high school I still had a lot of pain and anger and sadness in me because of that, which I never really worked through or let out. Took her with me for Mother's Day one year and I broke down, cried and let a lot of emotions out. She stood there with me holding me telling me it's okay and had so much compassion and care in her eyes. It was the first time in years that I felt like I wasn't carrying all that pain inside. We just hit 7 years. When did you know your S.O. was the one? Part 9. The day we moved in together. I moved all of my stuff into his place, and was unpacking some of my clothes. He walked into the bedroom with 2 plates of fish sticks and fries. We ate supper on the floor in front of the closet, and I remember looking at him thinking that I could eat this crappy cardboard food every day for the rest of my life as long as I'm with him. 7 months later and we're currently looking to purchase a new home together. When did you know your S.O. was the one? I can't say there was any exact moment. I guess the thing that most made it click in my head is that I started picturing our future together, and then all of a sudden, to me, I couldn't picture a future alone. Every wish has a small part of him in it, one way or another. And I feel so happy about that. It feels peaceful. Who or what is almost universally hated in your profession? The clients, really. People just don't appreciate how much work goes into translation, and then when they are told the price they get all haughty and start saying it's ridiculous to charge that amount of money when they could just use Google Translate. Go ahead, buddy. Use it. See if I care when you end up telling people you're selling a used butthole instead of a handmade tablecloth.